The morning sun spilled over our balcony, bathing everything in gold. I could hear the ocean murmuring just beyond the terrace, steady and hypnotic. Sitting across from Daniel, I tried to convince myself that this weekend was exactly what we needed. A chance to breathe, to reconnect. He smiled at me, that easy smile that used to melt every worry away. For a moment, I almost believed in the peace I was pretending to feel. He reached across the table, his hand warm against mine. "You've been so stressed lately, love," he said softly, his voice low and comforting. "I booked you a full day at the spa. Massage, facial, everything. My treat." His words should have felt romantic, but something about the timing felt calculated. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe I'd forgotten how to relax. Still, I smiled, because that's what you do when you want things to be okay. "That's sweet," I said, tilting my head, searching his eyes for sincerity. "But what about you? I thought we'd go hiking together." He chuckled, waving it off. "I just want you to relax," he said. "I'll catch up on some work emails at the lounge. We'll meet for dinner tonight." I hesitated, my heart tugging between trust and doubt. "Okay. Thank you," I finally said. I guess I could use some time to unwind. After breakfast, I walked down the wooden path toward the spa, the salty breeze brushing against my skin. The resort was almost too perfect. White umbrellas, polished smiles, every sound softened by the ocean. I should have felt grateful, but something inside me felt out of sync. Maybe it was the way Daniel had insisted I spend the day alone. Maybe it was the flicker in his eyes when I'd mentioned hiking. Still, I pushed the thought away. I wanted to believe this weekend was our reset button. As I checked into the spa, the scent of lavender and eucalyptus wrapped around me like a hug I didn't know I needed. The receptionist handed me a robe, and for the first time in months, I let myself exhale. I could hear soft music playing, waves crashing faintly in the distance, and for a brief moment I thought, maybe this is what peace feels like. I wanted to hold on to that thought, even if it felt fragile, like glass in my hands. Lying on the massage table, I tried to clear my mind, but my thoughts kept drifting back to Daniel, his charm, his sudden gestures of affection whenever things started to feel distant. I remembered how he'd done this before, planned surprises right when I began to question his warmth. Still, I told myself this time was different. This was love finding its rhythm again, wasn't it? I smiled at the thought, my eyes fluttering closed, unaware of how quickly that illusion was about to break. When the massage ended, I floated in that calm, hazy space between relaxation and reality. My muscles felt loose, but my mind, it wouldn't settle. I kept replaying Daniel's smile at breakfast, too smooth, too certain, like a man performing a role he'd already rehearsed. I tried to shake it off, sipping cucumber water as I watched other couples passing by the spa windows, laughing, touching, glowing with that easy kind of love I used to feel. Maybe I was being paranoid. That's what I told myself, again and again. Daniel was thoughtful, successful, grounded. He wouldn't do anything to hurt me. Still, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered, "Then why does it feel like he's already somewhere else?" I buried that thought under polite smiles and small talk, clinging to the idea that this weekend was meant to fix us, not fracture us. As I changed back into my robe and prepared for the next treatment, I caught my reflection in the mirror. My face looked calm, but my eyes told a different story, alert, searching. I laughed quietly to myself, brushing it off as exhaustion. Maybe this is what we needed, I murmured, trying to believe it. But deep down, I couldn't ignore it. That subtle, unsettling feeling that peace had never felt quite this staged before. Hours passed in a blur of soft hands and ocean sounds. By the time I reached the spa reception, wrapped in a robe and slippers, my body felt light, but my mind was still restless. I waited near the counter, tracing the rim of my glass of infused water, when I caught the faint murmur of two voices behind me. Their tone had that gossipy rhythm, quick, cautious, and curious. "He's here again," one of the receptionists whispered. "The same man from last month." The other giggled under her breath. "The one who books the suite and calls it a business meeting?" "Yeah, I saw him with that blonde earlier." I smiled politely, pretending not to listen, but the words clung to me like humidity. Something in their tone, playful, scandalized, made my pulse stutter for reasons I didn't understand yet. And then one of them said it, casual, almost lazy. "He's in Suite 409 again." My heart clenched. Suite 409, our suite. My lips parted, but no sound came out. I told myself it had to be a coincidence. There were hundreds of rooms here, but my stomach knew better. Instinct doesn't whisper. It roars beneath the calm. I forced a smile, excused myself, and said I needed to grab something from my room, though what I really needed was the truth. The hallway felt longer than I remembered. My bare feet made soft, uncertain sounds against the marble floor as I walked, robe tied tight, heart drumming beneath it. Each step carried the echo of a question I didn't want to ask. I passed the open windows where sea air swept in, warm, salty, heavy, and it felt almost cruel that the world outside looked so beautiful while mine was quietly unraveling. The scent of jasmine lingered, the same scent I'd worn when Daniel first kissed me. By the time I reached the elevator, my hands were trembling. I tried to steady them, whispering, "It's nothing, Sophia. Don't be ridiculous." But denial, I've learned, has a rhythm. It repeats until it loses power. My reflection in the metal doors stared back, pale, unsure, almost pleading. I thought about turning around, going back to the safety of lavender oil and soft music, pretending everything was fine. But curiosity, or maybe pain in disguise, pushed me forward. As the elevator doors opened on the 4th floor, the air shifted. Colder. Still. My feet carried me down the carpeted corridor toward 409. I noticed the smallest details. A maid's cart parked nearby. The faint buzz of a ceiling light. The distant laughter of strangers. Everything felt too loud and too quiet at once. My pulse quickened. Logic said it couldn't be him. Love said I was overthinking, but my gut, that relentless feminine radar, whispered, "You already know." When I reached the door, my hand hovered just above the handle. I could hear faint sounds from inside, the muffled hum of a TV, a soft laugh that didn't belong to me. My throat tightened. For a moment, I stood there frozen, caught between wanting to know and praying I was wrong. I told myself to knock, to end this ridiculous paranoia. But then, through the thin crack of the door, I heard it. His voice. Daniel's. Warm, familiar, and laughing in a way he hadn't with me in months. My stomach turned. I stepped back, pressing against the cool wall, the tiles biting at my skin through the robe. It couldn't be real. Not here. Not now. We'd come to fix us, to find what we'd lost. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. Maybe he was on a call. Maybe it wasn't him. But my body knew before my mind did. That raw, sinking certainty that only betrayal can summon. I opened my eyes and looked at the brass numbers on the door. 409. The same room number stitched onto the welcome card Daniel had handed me that morning. My chest burned as I whispered to myself, "No, it has to be a coincidence." But deep down, I knew coincidences didn't sound like laughter tangled with desire. And just like that, peace became suspicion. The kind that doesn't let you breathe until you find proof. My hand shook as I turned the doorknob. It was already slightly open, as if the universe had left it that way, daring me to step through. The air inside smelled of our perfume, mine and hers, mixing in a cruel, confusing haze. I heard laughter again, closer now, soft and intimate. When I finally pushed the door open, time folded in on itself. Daniel was lying on the bed, half-dressed, skin flushed, his arm draped around a woman I'd never seen before. For a heartbeat, I couldn't move. The world narrowed to the sound of their breathing, the clink of a wine glass tipping on the nightstand. It was so ordinary, almost domestic, that it made the betrayal sting even more. My lips parted before my mind could stop me. "Enjoying your emails, Daniel?" The words came out steady, but my pulse was a storm. He shot up like he'd been burned, eyes wide, mouth fumbling for an excuse. "Sophia, wait, it's not what it looks like," he stammered, pulling the sheets up like they could protect him from truth. I stared at him, at them, and felt something inside me fracture. "Really?" I said, my voice cold, detached, the way you sound when pain becomes clarity. "Because from here, it looks like my husband is celebrating our anniversary with someone else." The woman scrambled to cover herself, eyes wide and wet. "I didn't know. He told me you two were separated," she blurted, voice trembling. I looked at her cheap innocence wrapped in designer silk, and for a moment, I almost pitied her. Almost. "And you believed him?" I said quietly. "Congratulations, you've just won yourself a man who lies for sport." She turned crimson, clutching the sheet like it could erase what she'd done. Daniel reached for me, his face twisted in panic. "Sophia, please. It was stupid, meaningless, I swear." His words bounced off the walls, desperate and hollow. I could smell the wine on his breath, the one he said he'd saved for our anniversary dinner. I stepped back, away from him, from the bed, from the version of my life that no longer existed. My hands were trembling, but my voice stayed calm. Too calm, even for me. That calm was my armor. For years, I'd been the woman who forgave, who reasoned, who made peace where there was none. But standing there, watching his guilt spill out like spilled perfume, I felt something shift. The ache in my chest hardened into clarity. I wasn't going to cry. Not in front of him. Not this time. I turned toward the door, my voice barely above a whisper. "You can keep your excuses, Daniel. They don't fit me anymore." And with that, I left before either of them could say another word. The hallway felt colder when I stepped out. My feet moved fast, though I couldn't remember telling them to. Every sound was sharper: the hum of the air conditioner, the faint echo of laughter from strangers who still believed in love. My pulse thundered in my ears, but beneath the shock, something else stirred. A strange, lucid calm. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even shaking anymore. My body had shifted into survival mode. I reached the elevator and stared at my reflection in the mirrored doors. The woman looking back wasn't the same one who'd arrived here dreaming of reconnection. Her face was pale, yes, but her eyes, they burned with a clarity that felt new. Pain had stripped away every illusion, and what was left was someone I hadn't seen in years. Me. The version that didn't beg or hope. The one that watched, learned, and remembered. As the doors opened, I exhaled and stepped inside. My mind replayed every detail. The wine, the sheets, the perfume, the lies. Each image felt like a puzzle piece sliding into place. By the time the elevator reached the lobby, the tears had dried before they even began. I pressed my hand against my chest, steadying my breath, and whispered to myself, "You'll regret this, Daniel, just not today." Because revenge, I knew, was best served calm and cold. That night, Daniel called me again and again. His name lit up my phone like a wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. I didn't answer. Instead, I booked another room, same floor, directly across from ours. The irony wasn't lost on me. I could still see the door to 409 from my window, the door that used to mean home. Now it was a reminder that peace can have a price tag, and he'd just paid it. I spent the next morning sitting on the balcony, watching the waves crash in patterns that never changed. That constancy soothed me. I needed something predictable, even if it was only the ocean. Daniel slipped notes under my door, apologies written in the same hand that had once promised forever. I read every one of them, not out of weakness, but strategy. Every word told me who he really was: desperate, sloppy, afraid. When he finally caught me in the hallway, his eyes were red, voice raw. "Sophia, please, it was a mistake. I don't even care about her." His words fell apart halfway through, like he knew they meant nothing. I met his gaze, steady and sharp. "That's the problem, Daniel," I said quietly. "You don't care about anyone." His face twisted with guilt, but I didn't flinch. I'd learned that silence can scream louder than rage, and I had no intention of wasting another breath on his lies. The next day, I walked to the front desk with steady steps, my heart cold, but my voice warm. The hotel manager, a man in his 50s with kind eyes and a practiced sense of discretion, looked startled when I explained what had happened. I showed him the photos I'd taken: Daniel's arm around the blonde, the wine bottle, the "Do Not Disturb" sign hanging from the door like a flag of betrayal. He winced, then straightened, apologizing with a sincerity that almost made me feel bad for involving him. Almost. "I understand how delicate this is, Mrs. Lewis," he said softly. "What would you like us to do?" I smiled, calm and composed. "Nothing drastic, not yet. But when we check out, I'd like him to have a memorable send-off." The manager hesitated, then nodded, understanding more than I said aloud. His professionalism couldn't hide the flicker of admiration in his eyes, not for the situation, but for my poise. It's strange how dignity can become its own kind of weapon. That night, I sat on the balcony again, watching Daniel pace near the pool, his phone pressed to his ear. He looked smaller somehow, reduced. I felt an ache, not of love, but of wasted years. Still, I wasn't bitter. I was focused. I wrote a note in my planner, 8:09 a.m., breakfast with Daniel. He didn't know it yet, but it would be the last meal we'd ever share. And for once, I would be the one controlling the menu. Morning arrived with a deceptive softness, sunlight pouring through the curtains, waves whispering against the shore. It could have been any ordinary vacation morning, except for the quiet satisfaction building inside me. I met the manager in the dining area before Daniel woke. He had already arranged everything: the staff, the timing, the private breakfast room with just enough witnesses to make the truth impossible to ignore. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" he asked. I smiled. I've never been surer of anything. As I walked back to my room, I caught a glimpse of Daniel through the door left slightly ajar. He was pacing again, rehearsing his apologies like lines in a play. I almost laughed, not cruelly, but because it all felt so predictable. Men like him always think they're the main character until the spotlight shifts. I closed my door quietly and began to get ready, choosing the pale blue dress he once said made me look too elegant for breakfast. Perfect. I stood before the mirror, fixing my hair, my reflection calm and composed. My hands no longer trembled. My heart didn't race. Betrayal had burned through every ounce of fear, leaving behind something sharper: purpose. By the time Daniel knocked on my door, I was ready. "Sophia," he said softly through the wood, "thank you for meeting me." I picked up my purse, glanced once more at my reflection, and whispered, "You're welcome." But what I really meant was goodbye. The private breakfast room was already set when I arrived, sunlight spilling through the tall windows, silverware gleaming, the air filled with the soft hum of polite conversation. Daniel entered a few minutes later, nervously adjusting his cufflinks, his smile strained. "You look beautiful," he said, voice cracking just enough to reveal fear. "Thank you," I replied, my tone smooth as porcelain. "Let's enjoy breakfast. We have a lot to discuss." He didn't notice the subtle glances from the staff, or the way the hotel manager lingered by the door with a clipboard. To him, this was just another chance to charm his way back into forgiveness. But when the manager cleared his throat, the air shifted. "Mr. Lewis," he began formally, "our staff has reported inappropriate behavior during your stay. We do not tolerate the misuse of our facilities for extramarital activities." Daniel froze, confusion flooding his face. What is this?" he stammered. I folded my napkin neatly, meeting his eyes. "Oh, it's just breakfast, darling," I said softly, my smile faint but razor sharp. "You always said you liked to start the day with a little drama." The staff around us pretended not to watch, but the silence was thick, deliciously heavy with humiliation. Daniel's hands twitched, his composure unraveling thread by thread. The manager's voice carried across the room, polite but merciless. "Your company has already been informed, Mr. Lewis. As you confirmed at check-in, they were covering this trip." Daniel's face drained of color. I could almost hear the sound of his career collapsing beneath the weight of his own arrogance. He turned to me, disbelief etched across his features. You did this?" he whispered. I took a slow sip of my coffee before answering. "I simply told the truth," I said, my voice steady, almost tender. "It's amazing what a few photos and a detailed timeline can do, isn't it?" He opened his mouth, but no words came. His confidence, that smug, polished facade he wore like armor, cracked right in front of me. The same man who'd thought he could juggle lies now sat cornered, small, and silent. And the irony? I hadn't even raised my voice once. He pushed back his chair abruptly, looking around for sympathy that wasn't there. The staff averted their eyes, though I caught the faint smirk on the waiter's lips. "Sophia, please," he muttered, desperate. "You've made your point." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on the table, my tone almost playful. "Oh, Daniel," I said, meeting his eyes. "I haven't even started, but don't worry. I'll let Karma handle the rest. She's always on time." Daniel sat there motionless, lips trembling, eyes darting as though searching for an escape that didn't exist. The room felt impossibly quiet, just the clinking of cutlery, the hum of the ocean beyond the windows, and his shallow breathing. I stood, smoothing the front of my dress. My napkin slid from my lap to the table, a soft sound that somehow felt louder than his excuses. "Thank you for the spa, Daniel," I said evenly. "It really was refreshing." He looked up, his expression somewhere between disbelief and shame. "Sophia, please, don't do this," he pleaded. I paused at the doorway and turned just enough to meet his eyes one last time. "I'm not doing anything," I said. "You did." And for the first time in years, the words didn't tremble, leaving my lips. They carried weight. Final, liberating weight. He'd built a life on deceit. I just held up the mirror. As I stepped out, the breeze from the terrace caught my hair, cool against my neck. The staff went back to their duties, the moment already fading into routine, except for him, frozen in the wreckage of his own choices. Outside, sunlight poured across the courtyard like forgiveness I didn't need to give. I didn't look back. Revenge wasn't about destruction. It was about release. And walking away felt like the most powerful thing I'd ever done. Weeks later, I found myself sitting at a seaside cafe on another coast, alone, but at peace. The air smelled of espresso and sea salt, and the breeze carried laughter from nearby tables. I watched couples walking hand in hand, and for the first time, it didn't hurt. I wasn't bitter anymore. I'd stopped asking why and started asking what's next. Healing doesn't announce itself. It just slips in quietly one morning and takes a seat beside you. The waiter brought my drink, a bright, fruity cocktail that looked too cheerful for the woman I'd been a month ago. I took a sip and smiled, feeling the sun warm my skin. My phone buzzed on the table. New email, job offer, legal advisor, Maldives Resort Group. I blinked, almost laughing. A resort. Life had a sense of humor, didn't it? I opened the message, skimmed through it, and for the first time in years, my heart didn't race from anxiety. It raced from possibility. I leaned back, letting the waves crash in rhythm with my thoughts. He booked me a spa to get rid of me, I whispered, smiling to myself, and in the end, I washed him right out of my life. The sea breeze brushed against my face like a blessing, light and cool. Somewhere behind me, someone laughed. The kind of carefree laugh I hadn't heard from myself in years. I knew then. I wasn't running from the past anymore. I was already walking toward the life I'd earned,